He had already lost everything: his freedom, his future, his dignity. Then he discovered he had lost her too, and in that moment, something inside him shattered in a way that would terrify everyone who knew what came next. This is the story of Michael Crawford, a man who broke out of a maximum security prison and walked more than 740 miles across America, surviving on nothing but rage and determination, all for one purpose: revenge. But what happened when he finally reached her doorstep shocked investigators, divided a nation, and forced us all to ask ourselves one terrifying question: how far would you go if the person you loved most betrayed you when you needed them most? Stay with us, because the ending will leave you absolutely speechless. Welcome to Silent Witness True Crime Stories. Thanks to all my viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay tuned for daily true crime updates. Don't forget to subscribe, and also download your free ebook by clicking the link in the pinned comment. His family that valued hard work and loyalty. His father worked at the local steel mill for 37 years, and his mother was a nurse at the county hospital. Michael was the responsible middle child who graduated high school, played baseball for the community college, and at 19 enlisted in the United States Army. Military life suited him. He thrived under structure and discipline, serving 2 tours overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan. He came home with an honorable discharge and a chest full of commendations, but he also came home with something invisible that would quietly eat away at him for years: post-traumatic stress disorder. Michael never talked about what he saw overseas. He bottled it up the way so many soldiers do and tried to build a normal life. In 2004, Michael met Jennifer Hayes at a 4th of July barbecue in Columbus, Ohio. She was 23, an elementary school teacher with a smile that could light up a room. Michael was 26 and working as a warehouse supervisor. They fell in love fast. Jennifer later told friends that Michael was the kindest man she had ever met, that he made her feel safe in a way no one else ever had. They were married within a year in a small chapel ceremony. For the first few years, their marriage seemed solid. They bought a modest house in the suburbs, talked about starting a family, and spent weekends hiking in nearby state parks. But beneath the surface, cracks were forming. Michael's PTSD was getting worse. He had nightmares almost every night, waking up drenched in sweat, sometimes shouting, sometimes crying. Jennifer tried to be supportive, but she did not fully understand what he was going through. She suggested therapy. He refused. She suggested medication. He said he did not need it. He told himself he could handle it on his own. He was wrong. By 2008, Michael had started drinking heavily. It started with a beer or two after work to calm his nerves, but within months it had escalated to a 6-pack every night, sometimes more. Jennifer begged him to get help. She even threatened to leave if he did not stop. Michael promised he would quit, but the promises were always empty. The drinking continued. And then one night in October of 2009, everything fell apart. Michael had been at a bar on the east side of Columbus, drowning his demons in whiskey, when an argument broke out. Another patron, a man named Derek Thompson, made a comment about veterans that Michael took as disrespectful. Words were exchanged, tempers flared, and before anyone could intervene, Michael threw the first punch. The fight spilled into the parking lot. Derek fought back, but Michael, fueled by alcohol and years of suppressed rage, did not stop. He hit Derek again and again, even after Derek fell to the ground. By the time police arrived, Derek was unconscious with a fractured skull, a broken jaw, and permanent vision loss in his left eye. Michael was arrested on the spot and charged with aggravated assault. The trial was swift and brutal. Michael's lawyer argued that his PTSD should be considered a mitigating factor, that he deserved treatment, not punishment. But the prosecution painted him as a dangerous man with a history of violence, a ticking time bomb who needed to be locked away. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours. Michael Crawford was found guilty and sentenced to 12 years in the Ohio State Penitentiary, a maximum security facility located about 80 miles northwest of Columbus. Jennifer sat in the courtroom gallery when the verdict was read. tears streaming down her face. Michael turned to look at her one last time before the guards led him away. He mouthed the words, "I am sorry." She nodded but did not say anything back. That image, that final look, would haunt him for years to come. It was the last time he saw her as a free man. Prison was everything Michael feared it would be. The Ohio State Penitentiary was a cold, brutal place where violence was a daily reality and kindness was seen as weakness. Michael kept to himself as much as possible, working in the prison laundry and spending his free time in the library, reading everything he could get his hands on. He also started writing letters to Jennifer. Long, heartfelt letters where he apologized for everything, where he told her how much he loved her, where he promised that when he got out, things would be different. At first, Jennifer wrote back. Her letters were short and cautious, but they were something. She told him about her job, her family, the weather. She never mentioned the future. Michael clung to those letters like a lifeline. They were proof that she still cared, that their marriage was not completely over. But as the months turned into years, her letters became less frequent, and then in the spring of 2012, they stopped altogether. Michael tried not to panic. He told himself she was busy, that she needed space, that she would write again when she was ready. But deep down he knew something was wrong. He called her collect from the prison phone, but she never answered. He sent more letters, but they went unanswered. He asked his mother to check on Jennifer. His mother called him back a week later with news that shattered his world. Jennifer had filed for divorce. The papers had been served to the prison weeks earlier, but the administration had not forwarded them to Michael right away. When he finally received them, he sat on his bunk and read them over and over, his hands shaking. The divorce petition was cold and clinical. Irreconcilable differences. No mention of love, no mention of the years they had spent together, no mention of the promises they had made. Just legal jargon and a request to dissolve the marriage as quickly as possible. Michael felt something break inside him that day. Not his heart. His heart had already been broken. This was something deeper, something more fundamental. It was his sense of hope, his belief that if he just did his time and stayed out of trouble, everything would eventually be okay. That belief was gone now. All that remained was emptiness and anger. Michael tried to contest the divorce, but it was pointless. Ohio law did not require both parties to agree to a divorce, and Jennifer had every legal right to end the marriage. The divorce was finalized in August of 2012. Michael was not present for the final hearing. He was not even notified when it was over. He only found out when his lawyer sent him a brief letter stating that the marriage had been officially dissolved. That night, Michael lay in his cell staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of his relationship with Jennifer in his mind. The first time they met, their wedding day, the way she used to laugh at his terrible jokes, the way she would rest her head on his shoulder when they watched movies. All of it felt like a lifetime ago, like it had happened to someone else. But the real devastation came 6 months later in February of 2013. Michael received a letter from his younger sister, Emily. She had hesitated to tell him, she wrote, but she thought he deserved to know the truth. Jennifer was not just moving on with her life. She was already with someone else. His name was Ryan Bennett, and he was a personal trainer at a gym in downtown Columbus. According to Emily, Jennifer and Ryan had been seeing each other for over a year, possibly longer. Emily had seen them together at a restaurant holding hands, laughing, looking very much like a couple in love. She had even heard from mutual friends that Ryan had moved into the house that Michael and Jennifer had bought together, the house where they had planned to raise a family. Emily apologized for being the one to tell him, but she thought he had a right to know. Michael read the letter 3 times before the words fully sank in. Jennifer had not just left him, she had replaced him, and she had done it while he was locked in a cage, unable to do anything about it. The jealousy was unbearable. But it was the timeline that truly broke him. If Jennifer and Ryan had been together for over a year, that meant the affair had started while Michael was still writing her letters, while he was still holding on to the hope that their marriage could survive. She had been lying to him, leading him on, letting him believe that she still cared, all while building a new life with another man. The betrayal was so profound, so complete, that Michael could barely process it. He stopped eating. He stopped sleeping. He became a ghost, moving through the prison in a daze, barely aware of his surroundings. Other inmates noticed the change, but Michael did not want anyone's pity. All he wanted was a way to make the pain stop. And slowly, over the course of weeks and months, a new thought began to form in his mind. A terrible, consuming thought that he could not shake, no matter how hard he tried. If Jennifer could betray him so completely, if she could throw away everything they had built together without a second thought, then maybe she did not deserve to be happy. Maybe she deserved to suffer the way he was suffering. Maybe she deserved to pay. At first, Michael tried to push the thought away. He knew it was wrong, knew it was dangerous, knew that even entertaining such an idea made him a monster. But the thought kept coming back, stronger each time, until it was all he could think about. And then one night, in the summer of 2013, as he lay in his bunk listening to the sounds of the prison around him, the thought crystallized into something more concrete. A plan, not just a fantasy, but an actual, actionable plan. He would escape. He would find Jennifer, and he would make her pay for what she had done. The idea should have terrified him, but instead it gave him a sense of purpose he had not felt in years. For the first time since his conviction, Michael Crawford had something to live for, even if that something was revenge. Planning an escape from a maximum security prison is not something that can be done overnight. Michael knew that if he was going to pull this off, he would need to be patient, methodical, and above all, invisible. So he started observing the routines of the guards, noting when they changed shifts, when they were most alert, when they were most distracted. He paid attention to the layout of the prison, identifying weak points in the security system, areas where cameras did not quite reach, gaps in the fencing that might be exploitable. He also started building relationships with other inmates, carefully selecting those who might have useful information. There was Marcus, a former electrician who knew about security systems. There was Leon, a career criminal who had attempted previous escapes. And there was Tony, a lifer who worked in maintenance and had access to tools Michael would need. Michael never told any of them what he was planning. He simply asked questions, gathered information, and pieced together a strategy. The escape plan hinged on a single opportunity that presented itself in the fall of 2014. A section of the prison's outer fence was being repaired, and for about 3 weeks, a construction crew was coming and going through a service gate on the eastern perimeter. The gate was supposed to be monitored at all times, but Michael noticed that during the overnight hours, the guard assigned to that post would occasionally step away to use the restroom or grab coffee. Those absences were brief, usually no more than 5 or 10 minutes, but if Michael timed it right, it would be enough. He also noticed that Tony had a set of keys that could unlock most interior doors. Michael approached Tony one evening and asked if he could borrow the keys, claiming he needed to retrieve something from a storage room. Tony was suspicious, but Michael had been careful to build trust over the months, and Tony eventually agreed with a warning. "If you get caught, I do not know you." Michael nodded. He understood the terms. The night of the escape was October 17th, 2014. Michael had been in prison for just over 5 years. He waited until the guards had completed their 10 p.m. count, then used Tony's keys to unlock his cell door. He moved quickly and quietly through the corridor, staying close to the walls to avoid cameras. He made it to the maintenance room without being seen, where he grabbed bolt cutters and a small flashlight. From there he headed toward the east wing, his heart pounding. He could hear voices in the distance, guards talking and laughing, but they were far enough away that he felt safe continuing. When he reached the service gate, he crouched in the shadows and waited. The guard assigned to the post was an older man named Frank, someone Michael had observed for months. Right on schedule, Frank glanced at his watch, looked around, and then walked away from his post toward the break room. Michael did not hesitate. He ran to the gate, used the bolt cutters to sever the chain lock, and slipped through the opening. Just like that, he was outside the prison walls. Free. But freedom was only the first step. Michael knew that within hours, maybe even minutes, the guards would discover he was missing. They would lock down the prison, alert local law enforcement, and launch a massive manhunt. He needed to put as much distance as possible between himself and the facility. He ran through the woods surrounding the prison, branches tearing at his face and arms, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He had no map, no phone, no money. All he had was the clothes on his back and a singular goal: find Jennifer. He ran for hours, guided only by the stars and a vague sense of direction. By the time the sun began to rise, he was miles away from the prison, exhausted and covered in scratches, but alive. He found an abandoned barn on the outskirts of a small farming town and collapsed inside, his body finally giving out. He slept for most of the day, waking only when the sound of a passing car startled him. When he emerged from the barn that evening, he knew what he had to do next. Michael's journey from the Ohio State Penitentiary to Columbus was a test of endurance, willpower, and sheer desperation. The distance was approximately 740 miles. Michael had no vehicle, no money, and no resources. All he had was his determination and a willingness to do whatever it took. He started walking. For the first few days, he stuck to back roads and wooded areas, avoiding highways and populated towns where he might be recognized. He slept wherever he could find shelter, in abandoned buildings, under bridges, in dense patches of forest. He scavenged for food, eating whatever he could find. Discarded fast food wrappers with a few fries left inside, apples stolen from roadside orchards, scraps from dumpsters behind gas stations. It was degrading and humiliating, but Michael did not care. He had long since abandoned any sense of pride. His only focus was survival and reaching Jennifer. The physical toll was immense. Michael's feet were covered in blisters within the first week. His shoes, standard-issue prison sneakers, were not designed for long-distance walking, and they began to fall apart after just a few days. He wrapped his feet in torn strips of fabric he found along the way, but it did little to ease the pain. Every step was agony, but he kept moving. He walked through rain, through cold, through heat. He walked until his legs felt like they would give out, and then he walked some more. There were moments when he considered giving up, when the pain and exhaustion became so overwhelming that he wanted to just lie down and let the authorities find him. But then he would think of Jennifer, of her betrayal, of the life she was building with Ryan while he rotted in a cell, and the anger would surge back, giving him the strength to keep going. Michael also had to avoid detection, which became increasingly difficult as the days went on. News of his escape had spread quickly, and his photo was plastered across local news stations and social media. Wanted posters with his face were hung in gas stations, rest stops, and small-town sheriff's offices. People were on the lookout for him. Michael responded by changing his appearance as best he could. He stole a razor from a truck stop bathroom and shaved off his beard. He found a discarded baseball cap in a trash bin and wore it low over his eyes. He avoided making eye contact with anyone he passed. Twice he came dangerously close to being caught. The first time was in a small town in Indiana, where a gas station clerk gave him a long, suspicious look. Michael left immediately, his heart racing, certain that the clerk was about to call the police. The second time was when a state trooper drove past him on a rural highway. Michael froze, pretending to examine a flat tire on an abandoned car by the side of the road. The trooper slowed down, and for a terrifying moment Michael thought it was over. But the trooper simply drove on, and Michael exhaled a breath he did not realize he had been holding. As the weeks passed, Michael became a ghost, a shadow moving through the landscape, invisible to everyone around him. He learned to read people, to sense when someone was paying too much attention, to disappear before questions could be asked. He also learned to live with the constant fear, the knowledge that at any moment his freedom could be taken away. But the fear was nothing compared to the rage that burned inside him. Every mile he walked brought him closer to Jennifer, closer to the confrontation he had been imagining for years. The thought of that moment kept him going, even when his body screamed at him to stop. By the time Michael reached the outskirts of Columbus in late November of 2014, he had been on the run for over a month. He was unrecognizable. His clothes were filthy and torn. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow. He had lost at least 30 pounds. But he had made it. Against all odds, he had walked 740 miles. And now, standing on the edge of the city, he could feel the end approaching. Finding Jennifer's house was easier than Michael had anticipated. He still remembered the address, had it memorized from the letters he used to send her. He made his way through the city under cover of darkness, sticking to the shadows, avoiding well-lit areas. When he finally reached the street where she lived, his heart was pounding so hard he thought it might explode. He stood across the street from the house, hidden behind a row of parked cars, and just watched. The house looked the same as he remembered, a modest 2-story home with a small front yard and a wooden porch. The lights were on inside, and through the living room window he could see movement. Jennifer was home, and she was not alone. Michael watched as Jennifer and Ryan moved around the living room, laughing and talking, completely oblivious to the fact that they were being watched. Ryan had his arm around Jennifer's waist, and she leaned into him, smiling in a way that Michael had not seen in years. The sight of it filled him with a rage so intense that he had to clench his fists to keep from screaming. This was the woman he had loved, the woman he had built a life with, the woman who had promised to stand by him no matter what. And here she was, living happily with another man, as if Michael had never existed. For hours Michael stood there, watching, waiting, his mind racing with possibilities. He could walk up to the front door and knock. He could break a window and climb inside. He could wait until they went to sleep and then make his move. But as the night wore on, something unexpected happened. The anger that had sustained him for so long began to fade, replaced by something else. Exhaustion. Sadness. A deep, overwhelming sense of loss. He realized, standing there in the cold November air, that no matter what he did, no matter what he said, he could never get back what he had lost. Jennifer was gone. Their life together was gone, and no amount of revenge was going to change that. The man he used to be, the man who had loved her, would have walked away at that moment. But Michael Crawford was no longer that man. He had walked 740 miles, fueled by rage and pain, and he was not about to turn back now. He waited until the lights in the house went out, until he was certain that Jennifer and Ryan were asleep. And then, slowly, quietly, he crossed the street and approached the front door. What happened next remains a subject of intense debate even years later. According to police reports, Michael Crawford broke into the house through a back window around 3 a.m. on November 26, 2014. He made his way upstairs to the bedroom where Jennifer and Ryan were sleeping. What occurred in that room is something only Michael knows for certain, as he has never given a full account of the events. What we do know is this. At approximately 3:45 a.m., a neighbor called 911 to report hearing screams coming from the house. Police arrived on the scene within minutes. They found the front door wide open and Michael Crawford sitting on the front porch steps, his hands covered in blood, his expression blank. Inside the house they found Jennifer Hayes and Ryan Bennett. Both were alive, but both had been severely injured. Jennifer had multiple stab wounds to her arms and torso. Ryan had been beaten and also stabbed. Paramedics rushed them to the hospital where they underwent emergency surgery. Miraculously, both survived. Michael was arrested on the spot without resistance. He did not try to run. He did not try to fight. He simply sat there, staring at nothing, as the officers handcuffed him and read him his rights. The trial of Michael Crawford was one of the most publicized cases in Ohio that year. The prosecution argued that Michael had meticulously planned and executed an attempted double murder, driven by jealousy and rage. The defense argued that Michael was a deeply traumatized individual suffering from severe PTSD, depression, and a psychotic break brought on by years of isolation and emotional torment. They presented testimony from mental health experts who explained how the combination of his military service, his imprisonment, and the betrayal by his wife had created a perfect storm of psychological damage. The jury deliberated for 3 days before reaching a verdict. Michael Crawford was found guilty of 2 counts of attempted murder, burglary, and escape from a correctional facility. He was sentenced to an additional 40 years in prison, to be served consecutively with his original sentence. He will be eligible for parole when he is 91 years old. In other words, Michael Crawford will almost certainly die in prison. Jennifer Hayes and Ryan Bennett both recovered from their physical injuries, though the psychological scars remain. Jennifer has spoken publicly only once about the attack, in an interview with a local news station 2 years after the incident. She described the terror of waking up to find her ex-husband standing over her, the pain of the attack, and the long road to recovery. She also expressed something that surprised many people: pity. She said that she understood, on some level, why Michael had done what he did. She acknowledged that their divorce had been painful for him, that she had not handled things as well as she could have, but she also made it clear that nothing, absolutely nothing, could justify what he had done. She and Ryan are no longer together. The trauma of the attack was too much for their relationship to survive. Jennifer now lives in a different state, under a different name, trying to rebuild her life away from the shadow of that night. Ryan Bennett has also moved on, though he rarely speaks about what happened. He still bears the scars, both physical and emotional, and by all accounts he has struggled to trust anyone since the attack. As for Michael Crawford, he is currently serving his sentence at a high-security facility in southern Ohio. According to prison records, he has been a model inmate, avoiding trouble and keeping to himself. He works in the prison library and spends most of his time reading and writing. He has never granted an interview, never spoken publicly about what happened that night, and has expressed no remorse for his actions. Those who have interacted with him describe him as detached, almost robotic, as if the man he used to be has been completely erased. This case forces us to confront some deeply uncomfortable questions. How do we reconcile our empathy for someone's suffering with the horror of their actions? Can betrayal, no matter how devastating, ever justify violence? And what does it say about us as a society that stories like this continue to happen over and over again? Michael Crawford's story is not unique. Every year there are cases of people who, driven by jealousy, rage, or a sense of betrayal, commit acts of violence against those they once loved. And every time we ask ourselves the same questions: could this have been prevented? Were there warning signs that were ignored? What could have been done differently? In Michael's case, there were certainly warning signs. His PTSD, his drinking, his violent outburst that landed him in prison in the first place. But even with all those red flags, no one could have predicted that he would escape from prison and walk 740 miles to exact revenge on his ex-wife. It was an act so extreme, so outside the realm of normal human behavior, that it defies easy explanation. So, we want to hear from you. What do you think? Do you feel any sympathy for Michael Crawford, knowing the pain and trauma he endured? Or do you believe that his actions were purely evil, that nothing could justify what he did to Jennifer and Ryan? How would you feel if someone you loved betrayed you in the way Jennifer betrayed Michael? Would you be able to move on, or would the anger consume you the way it consumed him? And perhaps most importantly, what does this story teach us about the limits of human endurance, the dangers of unchecked rage, and the devastating consequences of betrayal? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. We want to know what you think, and if this story affected you, if it made you think about your own relationships, your own capacity for forgiveness or revenge, then we have done what we set out to do. Because the truth is, stories like this are not just about the people involved. They are about all of us. They are a mirror held up to the darkest parts of human nature, a reminder that under the right circumstances, anyone is capable of terrible things. Thank you for watching.